resources and information from previous workshops that we've done. And if you haven't, let us know and we can go ahead and we can send that to you. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Oops. Okay. So you guys should see. Oops. Hold on a second. Hoping this. There we go. You guys should see a bunch of circles. If you cannot see what I'm sharing, please let me know. Okay. So we'll go ahead and get started. So my name is Judith Liu. I am one of the staff with Vet2Vet at FSW, and I am the caregiver facilitator, and I am a financial coach. And so I have been facilitating our money series, Let's Talk Money. And today's workshop is called The Secret to Financial Self-Care and Managing Spending Triggers. So the previous workshops we did, one was about savings, another one was regarding credit issues. And just so you guys know, next week on October 28th, we are doing borrowing basics. So everything from basically anything that has to do with lending, from taking out loans for student loans, for car loans, for mortgages, things like that. So that will be next week's workshop, and really talking about things to be mindful of, things to inquire about, disclosures to anticipate, and also how to prepare yourself so you qualify for a big loan such as those. And any taboos and misconceptions and such, because there's a lot of false information out there, and also a lot of information that's just really confusing. So we can do some myth busting around that as well. So today I wanted to sort of take a little bit more of a psychological spin, and also talk a little bit about habits when it comes to spending. And I think it's a really important topic. So I am using a very different PowerPoint tonight. If you've experienced any previous workshops, so this should hopefully doesn't make you dizzy, but it is a little bit more fun and visual to look at. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. So as I said, this is a little bit more of a psychological spin to it, but we are going to talk a little bit about financial self-care routines and practicing the right money habits. So it's really about habit forming behaviors. And so what I do want to do is just talk about what a spending trigger is and the definition of that. So I'll just read this particular thing to you here. A spending trigger is an emotion that causes us to give in to spending temptations. So spending triggers generally subconsciously make you spend money to magnify or replace an emotion that you're feeling. So it could be good, it can be bad, it doesn't matter. So, and as the result, it becomes this very spur of the moment or this unplanned purchase that happens. So I chose this image of this woman because I thought it was very indicative of sort of how we feel sometimes when we're trying to look for that relief. And we'll talk a little bit more about what those reliefs look like. All right. So here's a couple of things that tend to trigger individuals into spending more money. And we'll go into each one of these in detail, but I thought they were really important, and just curious if any of these resonate with any of you guys. And at some point in your life, you may have experienced at least two or three of these things, if not all of them. And there's one that's really a very extreme one, and we'll go into that particular one. That's the one at the bottom. So the first one is stress. And a lot of times, this is a very common trigger, right? Because we hate feeling stress, and we are always looking for that very quick relief. And spending can give you that, right? It gives you a sense of control. It sort of helps you just, you know, feel better for the moment, right? And so it's really important to just understand how often you feel stress and how often you sort of fall into this habit, right? Because it really could make your financial situation worse if you're constantly doing, purchasing as a result of feeling stressed. Okay. The second one is an emotional event. I put here a funeral, so the loss of a family member. It could be a variety of different things, but sometimes emotional events are triggers for us as well. And sometimes we need a little retail therapy as a result of an event that causes us some emotional distress. And it might make you feel better. And you know what? And that's okay. However, we just want to make sure that this isn't how we're always dealing with a situation, to help us feel better, right? So the frequency in which you are spending to feel better is what starts to become a major concern. And so that can get really tricky quickly. So I hear people talk all the time about retail therapy. Not gonna lie, I've myself have been down that road. Um, but again, it's all about the frequency, so we want to make sure we can put it on pause when we know, you know what, I don't really have that extra cash to do that shopping. And feel free to jump in, share stories or anything at all if any of this stuff resonates for you. Another one is social pressure. I always like to call this keeping up with the Joneses, or even saying things like champagne taste with beer pockets. We tend to, when we're with our friends, believe it or not, it doesn't stop. After high school, it still continues. There's that level of peer pressure to sort of keep up and maintain a certain lifestyle. And unfortunately, there's a point where we tend to do that and we don't realize how much it's impacting us financially. And so, an example here I put is going out to dinner with friends and socializing. Maybe you feel adventurous or you want to just tout a recent promotion or whatever it is, or you're celebrating and you decide to pay the whole bill. And then you realize, oh my God, I hope that doesn't bounce. So those are things that you want to just be mindful of as well. And so before you make a purchase, especially socially, you want to ask yourself, is this something, I really need or want? And how does this actually impact my relationship? So that's one trigger right there. Another one is credit cards. Just to give you some statistics, Americans have about 712 billion in credit card debt. And according to the latest figures from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, this figure is it's really hard to argue with it because there isn't necessarily a link between credit card and use of overspending. So credit cards can be a trigger, and the research has shown that if you're not using cash, you're more likely to spend more money when you use your plastic, whether it's your debit card or your credit card, because you're not going to feel the pinch. You may be able to rationalize it by saying, oh, it's not a big deal, I'll just pay it later. Whereas with cash, you're less likely to spend your money, because you want to hang on to those 20 bucks. You're not sure when you're going to need it again. So I've talked before about like the envelope system, carrying cash with you and having it with you so that you allocate, okay, this is the budget for the day, this is the budget for the week, whatever I have for the week in my wallet is what I'm going to spend. But if you have a credit card, you may get into that mode where you're saying, okay, you know what, I'll just pay it later. And so you end up doing that maybe more often than you want to. And then as a result, you end up having expenses that sometimes tend to become out of control. So credit cards can definitely be a spending trigger. Another one is social media. I know it sounds a little weird, but believe it or not, um, the research has shown that spending using your spare time, distracting you for other things, which is probably related to stress or avoidance or just boredom, whatever it is, can actually cause you to have an impulse to buy. And so studies are showing that there's less self control actually after browsing on social media. And so the default is to, fall a little bit more prey to targeted marketing. I don't know about you guys, but when I'm on Facebook or um, Instagram or any of those other really big social media platforms, there's a lot of marketing and they are targeting you. They're watching your browsing activity. They're definitely looking and they're ever have that conversation with someone like so I'm a big Boston addict, a Boston Terrier fanatic, and I'm very addicted. So I have socks, I've got everything. So I remember one day talking to my husband about I think it was like a figurine or something. And literally in my email, within the hour, there was some advertisement for it. And and I was, I'm an addict. So I'm like, I definitely need that. But I was able to pull myself together and get some self control. So yeah, so social media can definitely also be a spending trigger. I mean, that story has some other layers to it, but you get the point on that. Another one is a need to please. So what do I mean by that? So unfortunately, experts are saying that we tend to actually try to buy love. So we'll see something that's for sale and we may want to purchase it for someone to help, win over the helping them feel happy or, wanting them to like us more or, find some way to connect with them. And so unfortunately, that purchase then and of course we're seeking like a positive reaction, right? A loving reaction in return. And then the only problem with this is we tend to overspend, right? So we get that positive reaction and we're like, yes, and then you do it again or you do it with someone else and then we're frequently doing these things. So be mindful of your connection or your relationship to that person. Do you really need to buy an object? Can you do something that's handmade or can you do something for free or can you engage in maybe some movie time or in the living room or cooking them dinner? Those are types of things that we don't think about sometimes that they might appreciate more, is that time spent together versus actually the purchase of a gift that ends up putting us in debt. Another one is retailer tactics. So I don't know about you guys, but the holidays are coming up. Halloween hasn't even passed, and we're already seeing Thanksgiving merchandise and Christmas merchandise, and they are very serious when they are targeting you as you walk into the stores. And unfortunately, during COVID era, online it is bombastic. So just be aware of any type of trick. So this might actually get a little harder for retailers, and I'm curious to see how it'll get because as less and less people are, going to malls and stores and things like that, um, they're not able to sort of showcase. So I'll sort of talk about pre-COVID era. So what typically a department store would do to sort of entice you to buy is they would put up bright colors. They would use animation to get your shoppers' attention. Anything that they could do to actually trigger greater activity in your brain to associate you with impulse buying. And these are like very well researched tactics that retailers use. Fragrance in a store, such as things like a cinnamon bun during Christmas season, that can stimulate actual purchasing. And just to help, their whole idea is to help you feel this feeling of friendship and just connection to wanting to buy. Oh, that looks good. Oh, that smells good. And even if you don't do shopping, you're definitely buying some kind of food or something while you are, even if you say you're perusing. So some heavy duty tactics that retailers are doing to trigger that spending. Another one is special events or holidays. The holidays are tough because we constantly feel the obligation to buy. There's this pressure to spend. I've seen relatives of my own where I've gotten a gift and I'm like, did this cost like $10, which is fine. But it also had nothing to do with who I was, my personality. I almost felt like it was, or maybe a rewrapping of a gift, which is fine. If they didn't spend any money, great. But if they did, it was, well, sometimes I wonder, well, why bother if you're just going to buy a gift because you felt like you had to give it. So don't fall into that trap, right? Some families have a policy: adults don't get gifts unless you're the mom and the dad hierarchy in the family, just the kids. Or I've seen families do things like Secret Santa type style of gift giving, right? So they buy something, but they don't have to buy something for every single member of the family. So just be mindful of that. Ways that you can avoid overspending with that is holiday savings clubs, or just like a dedicated savings account that you can budget and prepare for that. So special events or holidays can definitely be very tricky. Birthdays, the pressure is definitely on. Research at SunTrust Bank found that 46% of Americans felt very pressured to spend more than they actually could afford during the holidays. And that was back in 2015. Um, and then the last one I have here is shopping addiction. At this point, we're talking here about some extreme uh, and emotional and psychological triggers. I mean, we're talking really compulsive buying where it's very difficult to stop yourself from spending. It's a very small percentage of individuals that actually have this issue of a shopping addiction, but it's a serious issue and it can really put some individuals in serious financial trouble. If you feel like this is you, some signs of it could be, or a family member, some potential hoarding that you might be seeing. So this definitely would require some mental health assistance on this. I've seen this lead to financial disaster, then resulting to potential suicide. So this is a really serious and a scary one. So if yourself or a loved one that does have a problem with shopping, you definitely want to encourage them and advise them for some assistance. All right, so enough on the spending triggers. So, how do we sort of deal with all of this? It's really important that improving your financial health is critical. And when we talk about self care and wellness, we are talking about going beyond mental health counseling, emotional being, and physical health. I'm not going to sit here and say you need to be exercising, and that's all part of it, but I'm talking about the actual day to day, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annual financial health that you should be doing to be able to stay on top of your goals. Okay. And we're talking about, paying down debt and avoiding unpleasant surprises. Okay. Um, so missing past due dates, just really being able to have a good handle on your financial situation. It's critical, right? Because we're talking about instilling positive money habits that are going to last you for the long term, right? Creating these weekly self-care routines. So we're talking habits, important habits, critical habits that are going to also reduce stress. A lot of times when I'm talking to couples or individuals who either have marital problems or just struggling to pay rent, and a lot of times it's because they don't really have a financial self-care routine, and that's really what we're going to focus on for tonight. And I want to talk a little bit about the science behind it, right? So, practicing financial self care means that you're developing habits that work for you and reflect what you are trying to achieve with your money. Okay. So, those money habits they look very different from one person to the next. So, it's important that consistency in practicing them for you individually is critical. Um, and so habit is critical. One of the things that can stand in the way of financial self-care is bad money habit. This book here that you see is by Charles Duhigg, and he's actually a Pulitzer Prize winner and author of this best-selling book about habits. And he says that the key to creating a new habit is to actually identify cues. So when we talk about cues, we're talking about the trigger of the habit, and then the resulting words, which is the habit. So for example, you tend to binge shows and movies, which is the reward, when you're feeling stressed out, which is the cue, and about your finances. So a little bit of an example here is he talks a little bit about countering the stress. So instead of binge watching, let's say like Netflix, Duhigg's model would suggest countering your money stress with something as simple as reviewing your budget or checking your spending for the week. And so the stress could be avoiding doing any budgeting, looking at any finances. And you know what? I'm just going to go catch up on my, I'm thinking of like the Mandalorian, on Disney. That sounds interesting. It's more fun and more appealing right now. However, because the problem we have is that we tried to avoid this big monster of issues that we have financially. But if you are checking it, even for just 10 minutes a week, you're more likely to have more of a positive experience, right? Because then you're on top of it and you're maintaining it, and you're less likely to check out and deal with it. So we're not saying sit, if you're trying to avoid it, you don't want to deal with it, and it's too stressful, just take it in chunks. So, there's this saying that, how do you eat an elephant? A little piece at a time, kind of like the financial stress as well. And so we'll go even a little further into this, right? So what kind of financial routines are we talking about? What kind of habits are we really looking at? So we're talking about a weekly financial self-care routine that, again, is going to promote good money habits. So if you're really super busy, you're not going to want to devote like hours and hours to managing your finances. What we tend to do is we wait till payday, and then we spend 2 to 3 hours trying to figure out, okay, what do I have going on here? And a lot of times you don't have to wait for that one day of month to really sit down and, again, put your arms around this big dinosaur or elephant of a mess that you're trying to get your arms around. So there's a couple strategies and how, I'm suggesting that you would take the approach. You can make a real positive impact, honestly, in your financial health. And we're talking about at least 30 minutes a week. And there's going to be two ways that you're going to do this. You can spread 30 minutes over the week by doing short daily tasks. So that's every day, maybe 10 minutes or 15 or 20, whatever you can handle. Or you can block off a solid 30 minutes once a week to review your financial situation. Okay. And so, the good news is that if you do this, you really are adopting a weekly self-care routine that just helps you handle it a little bit better. So let's get into the specifics of it. So the most important task to consider adding to your weekly financial self-care routine is whether you do the small tasks every day or all tasks in one day. So let's talk about bank accounts. One thing that's highly, highly recommended is to check your bank account at least 10 minutes per week. So whether you're doing this for 5 minutes every day or 10 minutes a day or a week, however you want to break it down, but as long as you're doing it. So you're checking in with your bank account. This is a really good way to track your spending and monitor for any potential fraudulent transactions. This is a small financial self-care task that you can do in less than 5 minutes. Honestly, if you're logging in every day, you can do it very quickly, scan for new credits or any new debts that are posted to your account, and review your balances. And it really will give you a sense of feeling of control, right? There's this avoidance to take a look. Oh God, what kind of a mess have I made? You're being proactive with this type of behavior. And again, it's really, again, that self-care, exercising every day so that you can feel good at the end of the week. This is that same thing. Look at it as this exercise of your finances. And this is just one example. So just to give you some quick statistics, people practice this money habit. 36% of Americans are actually checking their bank accounts on a daily basis. This is according to Lexington Law. This is a poll they took. I actually check my bank accounts on a daily basis. I actually thought I was neurotic, but then when I realized I was able to connect with 36% of Americans, I was like, okay, I'm not too bad. There's still not half of Americans, but there's a fraction of us out there. And I definitely will say it gives me peace of mind. When I go a couple of days without looking at my bank account, I will admit I get a little neurotic. Another reason you may want to be checking your bank accounts to spot any unusual fraudulent transactions. If you find it, and I said this last time, if you find any fraudulent activity, especially within a certain, sometimes it's within 48 hours or 72 hours, your bank or your credit card company can usually rectify it, and you do not, and most times you're not held responsible for it. I'll give you a quick example I was getting married and I was on my way to Australia for my honeymoon. International travel, big deal. We had all this money for our wedding, saved up in our savings account. And, we were like 2 nights away from leaving. And I started purchasing a few last minute international booking things that we were doing in Sydney. And so I moved quite a bit of money over. So apparently this website that I used, because that was the only way I could do it, they ended up taking like $7,000 out of my bank account that night. So the next morning, I even checked my bank account before I got an alert from the bank, and I was able to see that someone had taken all this money out. And I literally got it all back because I was able to catch it fast enough. So the sooner that you're on top of any kind of fraudulent activity, the sooner you can recover it. And that was a significant amount of money. Now, had I not noticed it for a couple of days, I may have had a very different response from my bank. So just something to keep in mind. All right. So the second one is review the bills that are due and check out the dates payments. So 10 minutes per week is also what we're recommending on this. An easy way to save time on paying bills is automating your bill payments. So we're talking about putting bills on maybe like an autopilot, which means that you're not worrying about writing any checks or missing any due dates. If there are bills that you cannot automate through your bank, which there are sometimes, then try automating them through the company who bills you. And if all else fails, then block out at least 10 minutes or so weekly, or like a 1.5 hours per month to get those bills organized and paid online or by check. So I think I mentioned this in the very first workshop, in the savings workshop. One thing that I've done is I have an account where I just pay my bills, and then I have another account which I like to call funny money. And so the account that I pay my bills in, when I'm budgeting, I'm always making sure that the amount of money that I need to pay my bills is in that account. And so I'm able to do automated bills. And it's both ways, whether it's the creditor charging me or it's me paying out, I know I'm covered. So you can set it up that way. Maybe you have a dedicated account for that. So the other thing is, just set up due date alerts. In worst case scenario, if that's something you're uncomfortable with, put it in your planner, put it in your phone. Just know when your bill needs to be paid. This kind of activity here goes back to having good credit, because you're not missing when bills are due, right? You're always going to be on time if this is one of these financial self-care routines that you're implementing. So that's one. So the next one is reviewing your financial goals. So this is basically like doing a check-in with where are you? Am I on track? Is the budget that I created, does it make sense with where I want to be? So setting very clear financial goals are going to help you, number one, get and feel motivated and develop and stick to good money habits. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau advocates SMART financial goals, which have the following characteristics. So I put a visual here. So you want to be very specific about what your goal is. You want to make sure that it's measurable, right? So specific, what is it? Measurable is how long? 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. Achievable, is this something that you can achieve? And how? What is the first thing you need to do within the first week or month within your 6 month, 3 month goal, depending on how long it is? Is it realistic? Does it make sense to what you want to do? Right? Do you have this very high overreaching financial goal? You may have to do a few other goals, right? So like, for example, home ownership might be one of your big goals. So maybe it's your 2-year goal or your 5-year goal. So maybe I've got to get out of debt first, then I've got to save money, then I've got to purchase a home. And so breaking those goals down sometimes make it feel a little bit more achievable. Because if you say I want to purchase a home and you're still paying down debt, it may feel like it's taking forever. But if your first part of your goal is to be debt free, then that's a little bit easier to measure and be achievable and stay motivated with. And is it timely? So I want to pay off debt and I'm going to do that in 6 months. Is the income there? Are you taking the second job to be able to help you pay off the debt? Or is your goal saying, well, I'll pay off debt in 10 years? Does that make sense? Are you ever going to be able to get to home ownership or take that vacation you've always wanted to because your debt goal is 10 years out? So those are kinds of things. So the SMART goal is a really great way to sort of break down your goal. And it's important to look at it. Am I on track? Am I veering off? Am I like way out into the woods on this one? There's actually a few worksheets that I can send. That I can have Andrea send out to you guys as a follow-up if you're interested. And there's a couple different ways to do the SMART goals, but I would definitely put it in your repertoire and your tool. We can send it to you and you can put it as part of your weekly financial self-care routine check-in. But they're pretty cool and they're great. It just keeps you on track. And this is organic. It can change and that's okay. Just kind of like the budget we talked about, right? And so, of course, there's the budget, or I like to call it the savings plan, but most people refer to it as the budget. This has really got to be at least 30 minutes a month per month, right? So it's really, it's the cornerstone of a very strong financial foundation. 80% of Americans keep a budget, and if you are one of them, it's going to be really important to keep it up to date. Since budgeting requires a little more time than logging into your bank account or checking your bill due dates, you're really going to want to block off an entire 30 minutes of the last week in the month for this task. You're going to be reviewing your budget. You want to be looking for current months and use. Make sure you're ready for the plan for the next month and that you're adjusting it based on, what's happening with your income, what's happening with your spending. It's really important because you're going to have recurring expenses that you're going to want to be looking at so that you can really take a look at, can I reduce or eliminate anything here? You're going to also have upcoming irregular expenses, right? So we had talked about irregular expenses in the first workshop, which was things like, parking tickets. I think I gave you guys the story about my husband's parking tickets that were costing us so much money. And I needed to actually budget for that, like an anticipation that there might be another parking ticket next month. And it was costing me hundreds of dollars. So, and just really looking at, car insurance premiums and any other birthdays, holidays that are coming up, right? So if you are already budgeting, you're probably already thinking about, what is the expenses for Thanksgiving going to look like? What are the expenses for Christmas going to look like? Or an upcoming anniversary or a birthday, those kinds of things. Or maybe you're planning a trip. Maybe you're still going to make that vacation happen, even though we're in COVID. Some people are doing it. They're camping. They're doing something isolating, but they're still getting out there and spending a little bit of money. And just other ways, I think I mentioned this before about using budgeting apps to sort of track everything in one place, or using a notebook, some kind of something that can hold all of your information so you can revisit it every month. I actually use a budgeting app. I actually have a written funny, like a little planner I created, and I actually use both. Right. For me, it's cross-referencing. Like I said, I'm neurotic. I admit it. I probably need to go to a support group for that, but I definitely have my finances in check. Right. So that's my goal, is to be on top of my stuff. So with that being said, what I want to just make sure I leave you guys with is, do not forget to remember, practicing financial self-care every week has a learning curve, right? So the money habits that you're developing now can pay off over the long term. And so consider some financial habits that you can practice, not only monthly, but we're also talking quarterly, biannually, yearly. We talked last week about credit reports. You want to be pulling those quarterly. Make sure you're reviewing your investment accounts every 6 months. You don't want to just throw some money in an IRA or a 401k and say, I will let my investor take care of that. No, you should know what's happening with your investments. And make sure you do a year-end money review. Look at everything, big picture, what's going on. Because the more that you do this, the better you're going to have a stronger financial foundation. You're not going to be avoiding it and binging on Netflix or doing something else to sort of avoid the elephant in the room. All of these behaviors can help really truly build a strong financial foundation. That's really the key. And if you haven't set any financial goals, really try to spend 10 to 15 minutes doing that. Those can really be helpful because it can at least give you some direction. How do you know which way you want to, what direction you're going? And if you don't even know what point A looks like, right? Um, so that is, I kept this one short and sweet, and I apologize. I can't see you because my camera is not working. But if anyone has any questions about anything that I mentioned or talked about, we can definitely get you the smart money goals. Tonight is short and sweet. I know it was fast and quick, so hopefully I didn't give you too much information. But my hope is that I gave you guys something that was at least worth, sort of looking at and thinking about. If you're looking for copies of this slide, we can definitely send that to you. We'll send you the money goals. Just reach out to the office and just let them know that you're looking for. Oh, thank you so much, guys. I appreciate that. Appreciate the feedback. But that's it. I short and sweet. Next week, like I said, it's borrowing basics. We're going to talk about lending. I know that's a real favorite and a popular topic. And hopefully you weren't too dizzy with this PowerPoint. I wanted to just keep it exciting and fun for you. So maybe we'll do the same for the next one. All right, guys. With that being said, unless there's any other questions, I will let you guys go. All right. Have a good evening, guys. Take care. All right. Bye-bye.